So good afternoon, everyone. As I said before, if you didn't hear me, my name is Karen and I'm a resourcer here at Ten2Two. And we're really pleased that you've joined us today for this business webinar on designing a role and perfecting a job description. Here at Ten2Two, we are experts in flexible and part-time recruitment. So we're going to share with you a wealth of experience today on this webinar around this topic. We will be giving you a recording from the webinar and also a document of Q&As after the session. So please don't feel that you have to make copious notes as we go through the session. Just sit back, enjoy and relax. And we're going to be doing this for about 30 minutes and then we'll be having a bit of time at the end for Q&A. But should any relevant questions come through whilst we're going through the presentation, then we'll raise the questions then. If not, we'll leave them to the end. But as we go through, please do feel free to put your Q&A questions, in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. That would be fantastic. Obviously we'll pick those questions up as we go or at the end. So I'm going to very quickly now pass over to Tracy Adams, who is going to take us through the presentation. Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you very much, Karen, and welcome everybody. So glad you could join us today. And just to add to that, we do also have a job description template which we can send out tomorrow as well. So again, don't worry about taking copious notes. There will be lots of information sent to you to follow up. So designing a role and perfecting a job description. So very quickly, let's look at the agenda. There's lots of information in the next half an hour to get through. So we'll look at the role design to start with. Before we get onto a job description, let's think about the role design, the circumstances, your options, a bit of flexible working, obviously, which we love, and factors to consider. Then we'll look at a job description. We won't look at a template, but we'll look at all the contents that you need to include in a job description. Its purpose versus a job ad, because they're different, and then the key elements you need to include. And as I said, we'll follow up with a template tomorrow. Top tips, and then time for those questions. So let's have a look. A job, let me just go back to some notes first. I just want to explain about the two different circumstances for having a job description. So you may have a specific role to fill because somebody's leaving, going on maternity leave, being promoted, or you may have a brand new role that you're creating from scratch. There's similarities, but there's also different considerations. So let's look at the existing role circumstances. What do you need to think about? If you have an existing role, hopefully you might have an existing job description. That's obviously a really good place to start. Don't worry if you haven't got one, because you can build this up through the process that we talk about. So even if things have changed over the years, having that is a good place to start. Then you just need to work through some questions and ask yourself some key questions. So, has the role been working? Has it actually been delivering what the business needs? Has anything changed either in the business or in the role itself? This could be the company has grown significantly. It could have shrunk. There may be new skills in the business that means some of the elements of the original job description are no longer needed. It could be that you've got massively improved technology in the business, which again either takes out chunks of this role or enhances it, or there's more to add in. So what's changed? Why is the person leaving? So has something been raised about their role? Often it's just for career progression, or they may be relocating. So it can be very genuine, but this is why exit interviews are great for roles, to understand why that person's leaving, and feed that back in to the role. We do find that people leave because the responsibilities aren't right. Either they're too broad, too much, or they're too little. You know, we do get people coming to us saying they're leaving a job because they're bored. And that may be because that job's changed over time. So yeah, try to understand from an exit interview why somebody is leaving. Could it be for more money? And we'll come on to that again in a minute as well. So could it be for more money? So they are going to a similar role, but for more money. If issues have been raised, can these be addressed in the new role? Is it that you can split the role into different ways, or shave bits off, or add something in? Going back to the money point and market value. So is your market value correct? Someone leaving is a good opportunity to review this. It might be that someone has been in that role for 10 years. I mean, 10 years is a long time for the market value of a role to change. So you can do some simple benchmarking exercises at this point to check if that's still correct. Look at the role purpose. So is the key purpose of the role the same? You know, since the pandemic, a lot of businesses look different. They changed their business. They changed what they did even. So just double check, is that key purpose the same? Are there better ways that the role could be set up? So it's an opportunity to change this. If not, again, I've talked about splitting out certain functions. It might be that you could split out some senior functions. This might be a more junior role, or vice versa. It might be that you can split out some more administrative functions and keep the strategic side. Again, technology improvements can come into play here and change that as well. Oh, apologies, I've gone back to my existing role there. Went on too quickly. So then look at your budget available. Go back to your market value. Your what's the market value of the role? Look at the benchmarking. Hopefully you have a budget in mind because you've been paying somebody for that. But if you have to change that, do consider other options, other ways of cutting the role to make it affordable. And we'll come on to the flexibility point shortly. It might be that you do just need to flex that role to pay for that kind of person to come in now. Take a look at the responsibilities. I've sort of covered this really, that you might find there's other people in the team that can take certain parts on. So that's an option. And something that's going to come up a lot during this webinar, future considerations. So every time you think about recruiting, think about the future. So think about the succession planning. Does the role have a route of progression within the company? Does it affect other team members in their career ambitions? And again, we'll talk about future considerations when it comes to, you know, this role might now look like this, but in a year's time, you think it's going to look like that, and how transparent you are with that on the job description to make sure that you're recruiting now for what could be done in a year's time. Or you might choose not to do that. You might choose to recruit somebody else in a year's time to do a bit. So there's lots of options to think about in terms of that longevity. So for new roles, there are similar considerations, just a few other things to think about really, but you have got a lot more flexibility with a new role. It is a blank piece of paper effectively. So keep all those things we've talked about in mind, but also think about this new role. So why has it come about? And this is important because when you come to recruit people, candidates will want to know what, you know, the purpose of the role, why it's being recruited. So is it because of growth? Is it you've got a new client on board and that's generated this growth? You know, is it that someone's overloaded? You need to support them by recruiting someone else in. So what's its key purpose? What are the one or two things, top line, that this role is going to be responsible for, and it's crucial that this role delivers? Who will support this role? Who are the key stakeholders? There could be a manager, line managers, multiple people across the business, and get them involved at this point. So if there are two sort of, there might be a HR manager and there might be a line manager, and it might be the FD, the owner, founder owner of the business, you know, get people involved at an early stage inputting into this role so that it doesn't go pear-shaped at the point of maybe final interviews and offers, or someone's in situ and you've got different views from different stakeholders of what this person was supposed to be delivering. What level does it need to be? We discuss this at length with a client. Often a client may think they need one level, but after discussion, it could be something quite different. So we had a recent example where the brief was to recruit a full-time FC, financial controller, but after chatting things through, it became clear that since the company had introduced a lot of technology into the finance team specifically and automated a lot of the finance processes, they only needed a part-time FC and actually they got a part-time bookkeeper. So they made a significant saving on the pay budget. They ended up with 2 part-time people, both very happy and relevant in their roles, without overpaying a senior person who would have been doing a junior person's work as well. So level, get that sort of understanding really clear to start with. Then with both new or existing roles, think about options. So we've talked about level, and this will partly dictate the level of pay. If you're unsure, I've mentioned benchmarking. Do some benchmarking. Look at your local market as well, your regional area, as well as the role itself. And we can help with this if you ever need to contact us and have some help with that. We always say this, but there's no point penny pinching. You will pay for what you'll get what you pay for. So do bear in mind and do a realistic benchmarking process. Hours. Does the role really need to be full-time? Could it work just as well on a 4-day week or a 9-day fortnight? It'd save you a little bit of budget. It might allow you to recruit someone with a bit more experience who's willing to do those hours or wants to do those hours. Our clients often go down this route rather than recruiting a junior person on a full-time basis who needs lots of training and hand-holding. And we often find that can lead to shorter, shorter turnover, staff turnover, sort of second, third jobbers moving on in their career. So someone who's a bit more experienced, slightly flexible, bit more flexible, they can hit the ground running and they tend to stay longer and be a bit more loyal. And then the contract type, think about that. So the default is often for clients to think of full-time and permanent. Often that is the default for all job descriptions. But why does it have to be that? So we've talked about the hours, the contract type. Yes, permanent is probably right for you. If it's long term, it's probably right for you. But there are other options. It doesn't have to be. You could do you could offer something that gets you to a permanent position longer term. So think about perhaps a 6-month interim contract. For the moment, that might serve your needs until you know what's happening. If you're really uncertain about the business or the market, perhaps a temporary worker can then lead you into permanent in the future as well. The downside of those 2 options is that you might not get solid permanent people leaving a permanent job to join a temporary or interim contract. So it might limit your talent pool a little bit. And then location. So location is really one of the biggest things that we are faced with at the moment in the candidate market. Since the pandemic, hybrid working, it is still very much relevant. Yes, businesses are starting to ask people to go back to the office, but in the main, most candidates want this level, a level of hybrid working. Some can be as little as 1 day in the office a month and the rest from home. That's probably quite extreme. But typically what we see is probably a split of 3-2, so 3 days in the office, 2 at home, or vice versa. That's if they work 5 days. Or you could say sort of 60-40 split, something like that. That tends to be what we're seeing at the moment. And I think with this is be prepared to be flexible. So if you find a candidate at the interview who just wants an extra day at home a week, if they're brilliant, can you make it work for that one person? So whilst you might go out with your job design and your job advert and description, at the point of offer, if you've got somebody fabulous in front of you, just think about that. Future considerations. So think about how this role will fit into the organisation. You might want to increase the hours in the future. That could be short term, 1 year, that could be longer term. Knowing this is really helpful for a couple of reasons. So it would be a shame to get someone in, as I said, someone in on like 2 days a week who can only stick to 2 days, and then you need them to go to 4 days in a year's time. It might be that this stage in their life, they can't do that. Having said that, we deal with candidates all the time who are on that journey where their kids are in primary or secondary school, and at some point their hours start to increase depending on when they join you. And ultimately, they mostly end up back at full time after a journey like through that. So that sometimes aligns well with a business's growth. But think about that when you're designing the job and talking to candidates. If it's a long, long way in the future, not so important. But if it's literally around the corner, that's very important. And I think, for example, if you know that you're recruiting a role that is going to grow in responsibility, offer that up as an enticement, because that's really interesting to a lot of people. So you might have a finance controller and know that in a year you think that's probably going to be boosted to finance director level. If that's right, for two reasons. One, it might attract people more, and secondly, it helps the recruiter, and when you're recruiting, to look out for somebody who's got that ability to step up. So those are the two the two roles: new role, existing role, different things to get your head around and be thinking about. So I just wanted, for a couple of slides, I've talked about this a lot because so far, 2 slides on flexible working. It's obviously our niche, our bag as well, but it does really make a difference when you are designing a job to be able to put things like this in your job description to attract a wider talent pool. And at the moment, that's really important in the market. It's a very strange market at the moment, and you need to be attractive to candidates in the market. So we're obviously advocates of flexible working. And we would encourage you to think about what level of flexibility you could incorporate into a role. And that can be anything, that can be hours, it can be location, it could even be holidays, so just think about that. But just to give you a bit of background, at the moment in the candidate market, 9 out of 10 candidates want more flexibility. 46% of people who are seeking to change jobs are seeking more flexibility. That's why they're looking to change jobs. That's the biggest proportion, 46%. All the other percentages are smaller reasons. So massively important to candidates. So what are the business benefits? Just really quickly, you could start small on a part-time role. You're a growing business. Start with just a small part-time hours. You could grow the role as long as you're clear and someone can do it. You could grow the role over time. Control your costs. So your full-time salary is obviously a big jump in fixed cost if it's a brand new role to the business. You can reduce this cost by looking at someone experienced on a part-time basis. It does allow you to afford good talent. You might find you get someone a bit more experienced on a not a lower cost, but it's the prorated equivalent of that cost. So you're saving your money, but it is getting you really solid, good talent with experience. And it's attractive. So not only can you afford the talent, it's attractive to candidates. So advertising for these roles really does open up the talent pool. By definition, it should improve your diversity. It's a great opportunity to attract sort of older and female professionals. Improves your retention. We know from stats and research that employees feel valued if you're able to be flexible for them, and they tend to stay longer with you. And that's also a happier workforce, less absence, increased well-being and higher motivation. So really very quickly, the next slide is just giving you a couple of examples of the types. The most common type of part-time working we see to think about are typically part-time days, so 10 till 2, obviously, 9 till 4, Monday to Friday, that works well, and combined with a lot of hybrid working is discussed. I don't mean a lot of hybrid working, meaning the majority, but it's discussed all the time. It's a common conversation. So some elements of working from home really help people. And it particularly now feeds into the sort of concerns that individuals have about the economy and cost of living. We do find we're talking to a lot of candidates about the cost of travelling into, for example, London is a biggie. So anything that can ease that is, again, helpful. And also, if the role isn't as operational and you don't need them to be in the office, you might look at then 3 full days sort of, or 2.5 days, you know, in a block, if you like, or well, not a block necessarily, I don't mean one after the other, but 3-4 days is a different way of looking at it. And that just means they won't be in the office for 2 days. But that could be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so it's spread across the week. And that just depends on the kind of role it is. We do see some job shares, but it's actually a really small proportion of roles that we handle. So let's look at the elements of the job design next. So factors to look at. So you need to make the job exciting. And it may not, you know, it may actually be quite a straightforward data role. It might, you know, it might not seem exciting to some people, but anybody, you know, anybody can create a buzz around your job description, and it's more than just the actual responsibilities. So as you're writing your job description and designing the job, think about these points. Let's go through them. So how suitable is the amount of variety in the position? Is there, not all roles have a massive amount of variety, I accept that, but you know, is there any element of making sure that there is a bit of variety for an individual in their role? How much responsibility is there? How much opportunity does the position give for autonomy? Not everybody likes to be micromanaged. A lot of people like to have that autonomy. To what extent are the duties and tasks to be performed whole tasks, you know, so that they do see something through to completion? How much opportunity is there for provided for participating in decisions? Now, even for junior roles, this could be around using someone's knowledge of what they do to contribute to projects that the company is doing. To what extent does the position provide for support and recognition? And I think it goes without saying, really, but is there a safe and healthy work environment when working from home? You know, check the individual setup at home. Are they comfortable working from home? Do they need any additional equipment to support them working from home to make that a good environment? Then obviously a nice office area to work in when in office. The personal traits and experience. So this is where you need to be really specific about the job they're doing and what they need to be able to bring to do that job. And this is where we'll come on to the essentials versus the desirables. Make sure that the essentials you put really are the absolute essential. You know, I'd question, for example, if they are an account, you know, working in an accounts assistant or finance assistant role, do they absolutely need to have Xero software? Could that be another cloud-based software? Because within hours, probably, of training, they'll be fairly up to speed. So just think through how essential essentials are. Every essential you add in will limit your talent pool and prevent, as I said, people from applying. If they don't tick every box, they won't apply. So let's move on to the next slide. So looking at the main purpose of it, I think, you know, it sounds like a simple question, but it is 3 main purposes. So it's the role definition. So it's for you as an organisation to have fully understood the role requirements, the deliverables, the management of it, and the budget. For the candidate, it's a description that they can follow. It's a record they can track when they're working. So this is the job description, not a job advert, which I'll come on to. So this is the internal document that is, you know, you should all be living and breathing it, really. And the management and candidate reference. And so for a new manager, that supports them to understand the scope and level of responsibility of that role and that person, and of the individual performing the role, you know, to have a reference point. And everyone has a reference point against what you're doing. So the individual and the management, it can be used for performance reviews. So it is a really important document, and it shouldn't just be shoved in a folder and put away once it's done and once someone's in place. So we often get asked about the difference between a job description and a job advert. So a job advert is a sales tool. a job description is an internal document, you know, and it can be used as to measure how someone is successful in their role. A good job advert emphasises where candidates should apply. So the purpose of the advert is to get somebody to apply. I suppose one way of thinking about it is as a product. So you wouldn't design a magazine advert for a product which was just a list of technical features of a product, technical specifications. You know, you'd probably pick out key features to sell that product. And that's effectively what you're doing for a job advert. And it needs to be short and sweet and succinct. Most job adverts will list the core requirements, the core tasks, the core skills, and it will also probably be a boilerplate about the company. And this is what we'll talk about a little bit more about the job advert. So good adverts, they pick out the key elements of the job. You want people to throw their hats into the ring. So take the core functions, responsibilities of that role. You don't need to list pages and pages. You can even summarize them or group them. You need to also bring in, at this point in the advert, sort of the heart of the company. What's the heart of the company? What's your company like? What's the culture, the values, the mission, all of that, a bit of history, all of that sells you to the candidate. And you also want to stress in this the benefits, which are the salary, and you know, the nice stuff which people look for, which is the package. So the pensions, the holidays, the team socials, free parking. So all of those really help. And ultimately, you want the call to action for the candidate to apply for your job. So it's not an onerous description. I'm not going to run through that table because it's quite a busy table. This will come out afterwards tomorrow, so you can have a look at. But you know, you can see that it's a sales tool rather than an internal document, so it's a summary. So moving on to the key elements in the job description. So this, hopefully if you used job descriptions before, hopefully you've got these in some shape or form. But let's just go through what really in the sort of I'd say order. It doesn't necessarily need to be this order because some people might shuffle them around a bit. But the title of the job. Beware if this is a complex job title or might be really unique to your organisation. And when you do a job ad, I would change it for the job ad. You can keep it internally, but if it's quite a strange, unusual job title, just beware of that. Where the role sits in the team, who it reports to, and if it has any management responsibility of any other direct reports. Key areas of responsibility, of course, and the deliverables, so you must include those. Objectives, so short, medium, long-term objectives. Both of these points, number 4 and 5, you know, it gives those employees a sense of purpose, worth, you know, responsibility, excitement. So include all of those. Is there scope for progression and promotion? And this can be a good motivator for some, so incorporate that. Required education and training. Now, this could be education based. So, for example, you know, an essential in finance is often an ACCA, ACA, CIMA type qualification. Try not to be too onerous in your requirements for education. So, for example, you know, you need a bookkeeper, an experienced bookkeeper. Do you need to know if they have a maths GCSE or O level? And if they've been doing a bookkeeping role for 20 years, they have demonstrable evidence that they can do that role. They might even have a bookkeeper certificate or an AAT level, that kind of level, you know, but just beware what you're throwing into the mix that might make somebody might not have done well at their GCSE, but actually are a fabulous bookkeeper and they've got 20 years evidence to show. And then soft skills and personality traits. So these can be things like the leadership skills. Are they a team player? Do they need to use their initiative? Location and travel requirements, I think it's sort of fairly self-explanatory. Then obviously you must include the salary and the benefits. And we do, I say you must include the salary. We do sometimes go out with roles without a salary on because the client has a particular reason for not wanting to put that salary on. I would say I think it will potentially mean you have less applicants. And there is some cynicism in the candidate market about clients that don't put a salary on their job ads, particularly. So I would always encourage to put a salary on. It really helps attract the right people and have that right discussion early on. And then, convey your organisation's culture and identity. So this could be a factual paragraph, your vision, your mission, your values, or just a summary about what you do. So let's have a bit of a recap, bit of a summary. So at every stage, be as flexible as you can. Can you change anything to make that appeal to more people? Future-proof your job descriptions, as we've mentioned, but that could be in growth in hours, growth in responsibility. Think about that. Look at your market rates, budget you've got, the salary you want to go out at, and do put the salary on. Be realistic. So if you're speaking to the post holder, they may say that the job description doesn't reflect what they do. So think that through, look at that, identify what's not matching up. And don't throw too much into the role if you think it's a new role. You don't want to create a role that is impossible to do and someone will fall at the first hurdle. Get a second opinion once it's been written. So the line manager might produce it, but get another manager or the founder or the HR manager to be involved, get second opinions on that. And the post holder, if they're in place and they're able to contribute, it might be a sensitive situation, so you might not, and review it regularly. It isn't to be stuck away in a file and forgotten about. And companies are moving on quickly and things happen. So people's jobs do change. So do review it regularly. So that, I think, is my whistle-stop tour of lots of things to think about in your job ad. How are we doing for time, Karen?
You've done well, Tracy. We're just
Perfect.
about 4 minutes over, so we will move into questions. We've got a couple of questions from people, so thank you so much for those. Just to reiterate your point, Tracy, about really do review the job description if someone does leave the business, because the other thing to think about is actually, do you need to bring someone in full-time in that role, or actually could you bring a part-time person into a revised role and potentially recruit someone else in another role in the business on a part-time basis? So then you're getting 2 for 1, and that's not only skills and experience, but it's also mental personal intelligence that brings it more into the company as well. So really some really good things to think about during that session. So in terms of questions, we have got a couple of questions. The first one is around is it better to define the budget first or the role first?
Yeah, good question. I'd say you're better defining the role first. You're starting this process because you need someone in the business, potentially. Either it's a replacement or it's in the business. So I would really look at what you want them to come in and do first, and then work out what the budget is for that. And it might be that you end up at a place that's a bit higher budget than you want to, a bit higher cost than you want it to be. So then you need to sort of scale back and look at some of the flexibility. Let's say scale back, but look at the flexible options that might make that workable for you as a business. So if you're thinking, I definitely need somebody, but actually look, I've said it's full-time, I've said it's full-time, permanent and in the office. Actually, these are the core bits I need doing. So I could make it a 4-day-a-week job. I reduce my budget, and I still get these core functions. That's what we need. Because you can't change market value. You have to go with market value. So there's going to be certain things you might think, what's the most important to do? Okay.
Another question that we had was on a job description, is it ever too long?
No, I think within reason, no. I say within reason, you know, you don't want a 10 page, maybe 10, 15 page job description. Certainly not, no. But I think it needs to include what that person has got to do, and it's a reference point. So you are also including other things in there, you know, reporting lines, management lines. You might include a bit about the company, but the core responsibilities, they could be quite lengthy because you might only do them once a month, but they need mentioning. So it could be quite lengthy. So I wouldn't worry too much about the job description. But again, don't make it an essay, because somebody has got to track against that regularly. You know, they've got to track their performance and monitor it. So you don't want it to become such a scary document. It stresses someone out looking at it, thinking, I'm never going to do all of that. But I think with your job advert, absolutely, it should really be just no more than 1 page for a job advert, and that's the sales tool. But the job description, you've got a bit more, I think you've got a bit more space with, but realistic.
Absolutely. Okay, well, that's the only questions that we've got from the session today. So thank you so much for joining, everybody. We'll leave it there. As we said at the start of the session, you will get a recording of this webinar today. Plus also, if any other questions come up, we will send those a Q&A document out for you to review. And also, Tracy mentioned a profile, job description profile, which we'll also send out as well after this session. So thank you once again for attending the webinar, and thanks very much to Tracy for taking us through the session.
Thank you. Please get in touch. Our details are there on the slide, so if you need to get in touch with us, please do. And thank you for joining us today. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.